language pathologist at Dimension Center for Child Development. I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the Autism Deep Dive Masterclass today. Today's masterclass will be preceded by Ms. Chitra Thadatil, who is the Director of Dimension Center for Child Development, as well as the curator of this course. From today's masterclass, you will take home complete details regarding the Autism Deep Dive Certification course, as to what will be covered through the course, how each of you will be getting hands-on training, etc. As parents, children spend most of their time with you, and it is important for you to know how to handle and train your children well for them to be successful in life. This course will definitely lead you in achieving that. I also know that each of you will have a lot of questions and queries that need to be cleared. So the last 20 minutes of the session are allocated just for answering your questions. So if anyone has any questions, kindly send a message anytime during the masterclass. I'll be grouping the questions that are alike, and each of them will be addressed by Ms. Chitra Thadatil. Now let us quickly move on to the session. Over to you, Chitra ma'am.
A very good evening to each of you who's here. I'm so glad that you have taken time to participate in this masterclass to understand autism and to help your children better. We've constantly been telling whoever is applying to ensure that they are parents, and this is only for parents. We have designed it based on a lot of research, questioning, answering, interacting with parents, finding out what are their specific needs, what are their specific challenges, what is it that they really want to learn, and what are they looking forward to in terms of understanding how to work with their children. We've done a lot of scientific research as well. For example, we've understood how the brain functions and how to break it down in simpler terms for parents so that you can understand a difference in a neurowiring and you will be able to help your children accordingly. With this as a start and an introduction, I would like to now hear from you two things. One is the age of your child. Two, where are you from? For example, if I were to type in these details, I would put age of my child as, just a second. I would put age of my child as 13, and I would put where I am as Bangalore, India. I would like to hear from you. So please go on, put it in the chat, the age of your child and where are you from. That'll help me also to address specific to the child's needs and where you are from. Be more culturally sensitive. Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, India, Canada, Pondicherry, Mumbai. Age of the child, okay. Tirupur, Chennai, Bangalore, India, Bangalore, Kolkata, Salem, Vijayawada. I see your ages also, mostly it is less than 8 years as of now, and ranging from 3 onwards. Bangalore, yes. All right, thank you so much, because if you were in person, I would have interacted with you and asked you these questions. And I'm glad that you shared where you are from and how old your children are. There's someone from Spain, Barcelona. So welcome on board. We're going to understand autism a lot more deeper. And this course is called Autism Deep Dive. What we are doing is a masterclass to help you understand what you can expect in the upcoming certificate program. So I want to take you through a neurodiversity affirming perspective, because that is the current trend in the research of autism. And when we understand autism as a difference in wiring and how the brain functions, rather than seeing it pathological, a lot of our perspectives as individual will change. A lot of the way that we do our practices, or how we address our children, how we communicate with them, how we deal with a problem behavior, a so-called problem behavior, or a meltdown with our children. Now, if you see, as per the statistics, the most recent statistics that I could find out, which had proper research and references, was 2016. This data lets us know that 1 in 54 children are being diagnosed with autism in the recent years. And boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed as compared to girls. But there's also an upcoming research which is showing us that by 2040, 1 in 2 children might be diagnosed with autism. So there is a growing numbers that show us that more and more individuals are being diagnosed with autism. So it is really important for parents to understand their children, because parents spend most of their waking hours with their kids, thinking about their kids, planning for their kids. And children, especially younger than 6 years of age, they spend most of their waking hours with their parents. So, for example, there is a meltdown. If the parent is unable to address this meltdown, what happens? 1, the parent gets stressed, anxious. Parent doesn't know what to do. They feel helpless and defeated. And when the parent tries to address the child from that feeling of defeat or stress and anxiety, the chances are that they transfer their dysregulation to their children. Not that we parents intend to do that, but it's just unknowingly done, because no parent would ever want to hurt their children, right? So if parents understand how the child's brain is wired, why they do what they do, and how to address it from a bottom-up approach, that will give more light. So talking about bottom-up approach, let me explain to you what it is. Now, what you see here is an iceberg, right? Now look at this. When I asked parents to fill in the questions that we sent across, the form filling basically, I also had a question there asking you 3 things that you want to deal with, or 3 things that you want me to address. And on a hierarchy of the most asked or most cited difficulty for parents to the least. So meltdowns was what was listed in like 50-60% of parents have written the words meltdown or problem behaviors. They both were like quite similar. So basically problem behaviors are sometimes called as meltdowns. Meltdowns are sometimes called as problem behaviors by parents. I'm going to address what is causing these things, so you will have an idea of how you will help your child at home. Okay, so when I've asked the parents, this is what you have put in the form: meltdowns, problem behaviors, not speaking, hyperactivity, social interaction difficulties, lack of attention, and concentration. Okay. Now, I want you to understand why our children are struggling with these aspects you've listed in the form. And how do we deal with this? Now, just going to a meltdown and addressing the meltdown by saying, hey, don't cry, it's okay, it's broken, what do we do about it? We can't fix it. Or saying things like, stop crying, quiet, no making noise. Or saying, stop spinning, hands down, right? Or stop rocking, stop the behavior, control the behavior. I've heard parents use these words in the past during my 2 decades of practice working with autistic children. And when children are not speaking, parents often tend to force them to speak or ask them to speak, and teach from a perspective of expecting something out, and also and underlying anxiety. And what happens, children all the more don't speak. And when parents are addressing only the tip of an iceberg, meltdown increases. And their repetitive pattern of movement or focused interest increases. Okay. And when parents insist children to talk to the neighbor who's come home, or tell them, I want you to say hello now, or telling things like, oh, he's just being a bad boy, leave him alone, thinking that when you say that, your kid will come and interact with the guests who have come home. I mean, these things are happening in homes around us. So when we address it in this manner, what are we doing? We are addressing only the tip of an iceberg. Another example, if child is not looking at the book or not coloring, keep forcing child to look into the book or color the pictures there. I'll give you an example. I had this parent who came to me for therapy for her son, who was 4 years, 8 months, or 4 years, 10 months old. I'm not able to exactly recollect if it's 8 or 10 months. But when she came to me, this boy did not have a single word in his vocabulary. Eventually, he picked up, he started speaking in sentences. Now he goes to an inclusive school. But what I noticed is, so I had to, for this 4 year, 8 month old, although he had attended therapies for 2 years, he had no foundation as such. He didn't know his own body parts. He didn't know basic objects around him that he's using. So I actually started for him from scratch. So there was this day that he did fantastic identification of flashcards, and I was very thrilled. And I told the parent, please work on this, and this at home. And the parent said yes, and she went back, and this boy came to me the next day, and I put the flashcards out, and he seemed very confused. He didn't know how to figure things out. So here's this boy who did fantastic the previous day, literally 100% correct in every identification. And the very next day, just a matter of 24 hours, and he's already confused. So I spoke to the parent and I said, I'm very concerned. I don't know why this happened. Did you work with him at home? Because as a clinician, I knew that something has gone wrong in another environment. It could have been another therapy setting. It could have been at home. And I said, something is off. Looks like there was a lot of pressure on him. Can you please explain to me what happened? I want to understand so we can prevent this in the future. And then the mom confessed that the previous day she worked with him for half an hour on flashcards, and she forced the child to stay on that table, that chair, and she insisted that he identifies it perfectly, because I said he identified everything with me. And then I explained to the parent how it's important for us not to force kids and not to demand speech, not to force pointing. And then we work through together, the mom and me work through together to where he is now. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to only work on the tip of an iceberg by dealing with only the things that you can see outside, you're going to actually make things more complicated for your child. But what we need to consider is the underlying processes. And what that is the brain wiring. And this is what I want you all to understand, to know how you can work from the perspective of a difference in the brain wiring, rather than seeing things pathological and trying to normalize everything, okay? In order to help you understand this further, I have put this image here. On the left side, you see the typical brain, and on the right side, you see the autistic brain. And what is the difference here? There is way too many wiring. And there's an unusually rapid growth in infancy and early childhood. And these are atypical patterns of connectivity. What is that? It means that when the brain has more wiring, or it grows more rapidly than it should, there is a lot of chaos inside the brain. There's a lot of connection issues. It's like you have a lot of wires coming out of your systems, and you're trying to fix that, and you're getting confused because there's way more than what typically should be, right? I'm just taking you to a literal example to help you understand. And it is not as simple as I'm understanding, as simple as I'm explaining it to you. It's much more complex, but I'm hoping that these simpler terms will help you as parents to understand what is the differences in the brain of an autistic child and why do they have certain difficulties that you and I probably are finding it difficult to understand and comprehend. Yeah. I have specified a few more areas in the brain that I want you to understand. One is the mesial temporal lobe. The mesial temporal lobe is right inside. You can't just, you just have, it's right behind. You can't just see it from the outside. It's a complex structure. The frontal lobe, that's the front part of the brain. The mesial temporal lobe would be somewhere to your side. And then the cerebellum, it's right at the back. Now, these structures help in memory, learning, understanding, social interaction, abstract thinking, emotional regulation, balance, coordination, muscle tone, and speech. It also includes feeding. It includes sensory processing. All of this I've not listed. If I listed, we could go on for a couple of more slides. But what I want you to understand is the core of what you can take back home today is to understand the specific areas of the brain that are wired differently for some of our children. Okay, one is we saw there is unusual rapid growth during their early infancy and childhood years. We also see that some of these areas that I've listed here, the limbic system, etc., they are more thinner or they are overwired or they are more thicker, okay, which helps us to understand why sometimes our kids learn and they forget. Does any of you have a child who learns something and the next day they forget and again you have to retrain them? This is the reason why, okay, because of their brain structures, which is also the reason why they have difficulty even in social interaction, because while this child is trying to communicate to somebody or someone is communicating to the child, there are other distractions in the environment they tend to get distracted with, and they're not able to focus on what someone is talking to them. So yeah, basically, this is what I want you to take back, understanding what are some of the differences that I've marked here to help you understand why our kids function differently. I also want you to understand what autism spectrum is all about, okay? But before that, I want to give you an example, which is why I paused and I just got carried away with somebody logging in. So coming back to this child that I was talking to you about, the 4-year, 8-month-old child, when he came to me, he would keep forgetting what he learns. One is he was getting confused. And now that confusion with what happened at home is after like 6 months of therapy. But when we just started, he would learn something. And the next week, if I revised it, he was forgetting it. So what the moment I did was we worked on his skills, whatever we were working on nouns and verbs at that time. And he started eventually labeling those words. But the next day, if I asked him, he wouldn't know how to label that. He would be blank. So what we did was we would work 1 week on a set of things. And that weekend, we would revise it. Again, on Monday, we would start with what we did the previous week. And he used to come to me for therapy every day. And on Monday, we would again revise the whole process. And then we will add on something new. And the third week, we will revise what we did on the first week, second week, and third week. And the fourth week, we add something new and we revise what we did on the first, second, third, fourth week. And when we did this for a couple of months, his memory improved. After that, he was able to retain information much more. The good news is our brain is neuroplastic. And because our brain is neuroplastic, it is making new connections. It's like dealing with diabetes. I give this explanation to a lot of our parents to let them know that we can put some things together and help our kids overcome some of the challenges that they're experiencing. If your parents are diabetic, the chances are you will also be diabetic. However, if you are careful with your diet, if you work out consistently, you can fight diabetes, isn't it? What you're doing here is you're changing the genetic predisposition in you to become diabetic through environmental modifications, through exercise and regulating your body, right? Likewise, autism can be a genetic predisposition for your child. Through therapies, through parents, you working with your children at home, giving them an environment that is comfortable, that an environment that is safe, an environment that helps them to learn, an environment that stimulates the child's sensory system, that stimulates the child's learning capacities. What can they do? They can fight this genetic predisposition. And like I just now gave you an example of this little boy, your child also can help overcome difficulties with memory, with learning, social interaction, abstract thinking, emotional regulation, and whatnot. We can work with every child that comes to us. And as parents, I encourage you to take control. Because when your clinician says this, and this, you should, one, be able to comprehend what it is and be able to implement it at home. Many a times I see that parents find it difficult to implement it, not because they can't, because they think they don't know, because they think they're not clinicians, and because they think they can't do it. The fact is you can do it. It's just a matter of learning. It's just a matter of understanding more about what autism is and what are some of the interventions that can be provided by parents at home, how you can understand and interpret what your clinicians are saying from a perspective that you know what they're speaking. That confidence is what I want to build in you while imparting knowledge and understanding of what autism is all about. Okay, with that, I want to explain to you what autism spectrum is. Earlier, it was thought autism was a linear spectrum from less autistic to very autistic, or from minimal to mild autism to severe autism. We still have that as a part of our diagnostic criteria because there are some scoring and how children progress, how children improve. All of that has to be on a database so that you will know where your children are, how they are progressing. But we don't see a child who's less autistic as someone who doesn't have difficulties. Likewise, we don't see a child who's severely autistic and put a pathological paradigm and assume that this child cannot do anything. Be it less autistic or very autistic, autism is autism. And there will be differences in their way of being wired, irrespective of what it is. Children might experience anxieties, they might experience meltdowns, they might be overcome with fear more than you and I. They might have patterns that they have to meticulously follow because that gives them that comfort and safe feeling, right? So irrespective of less autistic or very autistic, there are some challenges that our children will experience. And as parents and professionals, we need to be sensitive to all of that. And I encourage you going forward to see, instead of just linearly, see more than that. Understand what are the social differences, what are their interests, what are some repetitions that they prefer, what are their sensory sensitivities, what is their emotional regulation like, how do they perceive things around them, what are their executive functionings like, what are other differences that they are experiencing that you need to understand specifically for your child. When we understand it more globally, like how I have put this image here for you, it's from Autism Sketches, put this image for you, you will be more appreciative, you will be able to give more accommodations, you can comprehend their needs better, you will know that they are communicating, but all this while you haven't understood your child's way of communicating. We see that a lot. So I encourage you to understand autism from a neurodiversity perspective. And also, we don't use terms like high functioning, low functioning, and Asperger's anymore, although some of the autistic individuals prefer Asperger's. The reason is because the tendency is when someone is considered high functioning autism, there's an assumption that this particular person does not need a lot of help. And when someone is given a diagnosis of low functioning, it is assumed that that child cannot comprehend anything. So we need to come out of this kind of a labeling, which can impede the effectiveness of how we are working with our children. I have a video for you here, the importance of regulation and staying connected with your child. If there is, so all this while, what we have discussed is some of the challenges that our children are experiencing. We've discussed how their brain is wired. We've understood what, as parents, you need to understand. That is, we don't work just from the outside. We work from underneath. That's the bottom-up approach. Rather than just seeing superficially, we understand the brain wiring and go to the fundamentals of understanding autism. And we build our structure, or we build the way we work with our kids from that bottom-up approach. Okay, that's what we've seen so far. And if there is one thing that I would like you to take away from today's session, that is this connection video, because that is key to everything that you do with your kids.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like, oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
I'm here. And what do you do? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. is no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Yeah. I'm sure by now you are able to understand how important two-way communication and interaction is for our children. You saw that still face experiment, right? And what did we understand from that? We saw how just the 2 minutes that mom did not respond, the baby was overwhelmed. Now, coming back to our autistic children, some of them do not know how to get our attention. Now, this does not mean that they don't need our attention. We already saw how their brain is wired. We saw their temporal lobe, their frontal lobe, we saw the cerebellum, and these are just three structures I've just pinpointed and explained to you, but it's not just these three. Almost many parts of the brain, almost 70–80% of the brain is constantly working on interaction, communication, because see, what I'm talking to you is not just my words. I'm using my expression, my voice, my hands, my whole body is moving and responding to what I have in front of you, of me, which is interacting with you. You have the video in front of you. I'm using multiple modes to connect with you, right? So when our autistic children are not able to express themselves because of the way their brain is wired, they become more anxious than what you see in this video. And it is important for us as parents to be available for them, even though they don't come to us seeking connection, because some of them don't know to ask you for connection. Okay. With this, I encourage you to rethink autism. And Autism Deep Dive is the course that I have curated to help you understand autism a lot better with a panel of professionals. We're going to have with me Dr. Krupa Murugesan. She is a faculty at SRM Medical University, Chennai. She has more than a decade of experience working with autistic children and an SLP. We have Dr. J. Sundara Pandian, who's a retired professor of pediatrics from Madurai Medical College. He is MD, DCH, PG DIP in adolescent health. He's a senior consultant in pediatrics. His specialization is neurodevelopmental disorders and behavioral pediatrics. He will be one of our faculty addressing medical conditions. We have Shama Madhu, who's a senior occupational therapist with over 8 years of experience with a master's degree in occupational therapy. And of course, me, the course creator. Most of you know me. And if you don't know, the website is below. You can go and read up on my profile and understand more better of what I do. The whole point here is helping parents understand brain functions in autism and how to help their kids from the perspective of knowledge and better clarity on how the child is functioning. So here is a brief. Now, this is not the only thing we're going to talk about in the course. It's going to be more in depth. I'm just giving you a brief today. It's about understanding autism from current research. A majority of what is out there is a decade old. 2 decades ago, when I started my practice, I followed whatever my senior did, and I believe that that was the best thing to do. Now, when I look back, not now after 20 years, within 5–6 years, I figured out that what I was doing is utter foolishness. And there are some strategies that I implemented then, which I think I wish I never did. Because I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm maturing in the field, and I'm updating myself. And I want you as parents to get yourself updated with knowledge from current research, not from what is outdated. We also would like to help you understand what is the actual comprehensive assessment protocol for autism. I see parents going from here, there, everywhere, they're confused. My nephew is autistic, and I know how hard it is for families to figure out what they should be doing. So giving a comprehensive assessment, whom do you need to meet? What do you need to do? What are the tests you need to take? Is so many things necessary or not? Understanding what medical professionals do, what rehabilitative intervention is about, an overview of neurodiversity affirming practices, looking beyond the label of autism. Sometimes the label of autism can block our eyes. Sometimes not understanding autism can make it even worse. So striking a balance here is important. Dealing with meltdowns and problem behaviors from a sensory-based intervention and speech-language communication interventions. Building intrinsic motivation and helping a child attend to an activity through that intrinsic motivation, helping you to identify your child's strengths, challenges as well, understanding how to help your child with flexible thinking, reasoning, and problem solving, and overall planning your child's future independence. Because at the end of the day, all that we do is aimed towards our children's independence. And this course is going to be offered online. We're going to have 20 hours of online and 240 hours client contact in person. Now, this client contact in person is optional because I do understand some of you are working professionals and you won't be able to come to a clinic and do the contact hours. But if you are interested to do the client contact hours, eventually you can be a part of the team here or anywhere else where you can support children with autism as a professional who has an understanding of how to work with children from a perspective of someone who already has an experience, hands-on experience. So all training, everything will be given for you at the center. But this client contact hours must be completed within 6 months. You can plan it how you would like. It's going to be practical, it's going to be flexible for you. You will also receive resources. You will get downloadable checklists, worksheets, and eligibility is bachelor degree in any stream. This is the information about the course fees. It's rupees 20,000. And there is a 25% off if it is paid before the 18th of June. And the last day to apply is 9th of June. There's more information available for you on my social media handles. This is the Instagram QR code. If you're not there yet on my Instagram, please take this QR code, follow the page. I keep updating on autism and feeding intervention. You can go to the, somebody's audio is on, please switch it off. You can go to the link. You can also check the bio where I have more details about the course. And I would like to request Akshaya to please share the link where parents can find more information on the course to register, the registration link. Yeah, so that brings us to an end of the masterclass. I encourage you to admit yourself, register yourself for the course, learn with me, learn with a panel of professionals. You will also have one-on-one mentoring session, 1 hour as a part of this course. And now I'm sure that there are a few questions. I would like to take up the questions if there are any.
Ma'am, one of the questions is, can the course be done online?
Yes, it is an online course. The theory is online and practical is optional. If you want to do the practicals, then you can come to the center for working with the children. Otherwise, it's online theory.
Ma'am, one question. I think, is there any autism certificate which is provided to autistic children, and how is it important? How does it help parents or children in their whole life time?
Yeah, so there is this place called DRDO that will do an evaluation. There will be a diagnosis of autism, and there is also a degree to which they mark the disability range. This certificate, I'm not very sure about how it happens in Karnataka, but my nephew has this certificate. The government gives a monthly allowance of 2,000 rupees. which I know may not be a big amount to you, but it can be definitely saved for your child for their future. That's one thing. Second thing is this autism certificate will help your child participate in sports events. It will help them participate in other extracurricular events, even academics. They can give you waive off a certain language. Like now many schools have 3 different languages, right? When you are asking them for waiving off of one language that is difficult for your child, you can get that waive off in academics. So it's now and even in the future, it's always good to have a certificate. Please get it done.
Yeah, and if we are using that certificate for a school admission and mentioning them that child has ASD, so does that certificate help in getting some waive offs like languages or some special needs help?
Yes, of course. It will give waiver for languages. Special needs help, I'm sure they will offer you. And they also probably might do their evaluations, because each place the evaluation protocols are different. But it'll definitely throw more light into what they're doing for your child.
And one last thing is that, is there any particular age for which we have to wait, or is it?
No, not at all. You can go anytime.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, another question is, explain about the importance of sibling in autistic individual. How should we rule out the genetic predisposition when we are planning?
Okay. There are, during the time of planning, I can take you back to the causes. One is metabolism related disorders in the mother or the father can increase the risk of autism diagnosis, such as diabetes, hypothyroidism. These kind of metabolic disorders can increase that risk. Okay, you have to keep a check on that. Age, paternal and maternal age, both are important. There are studies that show that when fathers who are 40 years plus, 45 years plus, 50 plus years, that higher age increased the risk for autism. There were also studies that focused on pollution. When rats were given the kind of pollution that we have outside, they showed more autism-like tendencies. But when this kind of pollution was not introduced, there were lesser autism-like tendencies. So even the pollution that we have, air pollution, can increase the risk of autism. Food, most of us are eating food that is totally contaminated. That can increase the risk. So you need to see how you can work around all of these environmental factors. Food, definitely you can soak it in salt for 10-15 minutes before cooking to remove all the toxins. That's a way you can do. With regard to toxins outside in the air and the pollution, see where you can live in a space that has less pollution. You also can get a genetic test done during your time of pregnancy, not before, but during the time of your pregnancy. So these are some of the considerations that you can do to understand for second child planning. And with regard to siblings, it's always great to have siblings. They have more opportunities for social communication interaction. There also comes a challenge at the beginning of this understanding between the siblings, because this child who's got all your attention all their life, all of a sudden might miss out on the attention that they were getting all along, because there is another child who's come in to share that attention, right? So that is something that you need to consider when you are having a sibling. So you need to be well planned, well prepared, and you need to also plan and prepare your child for this sibling who is going to come into the family.
In Bangalore, where can we find that autism disability certificate hospital?
I'm not really very sure about it. You can check with the DRDO office. You can Google it up and check DRDO offices.
Okay.
You can also check with NIMHANS.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, you're welcome.
Ma'am, another person has asked about the location of our center.
Okay, it's located in Hennur Cross. Akshay, can you just go to the website and put our website details in the chat?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yes, please browse the website. Our postal address is there and all that we do is over there.
Ma'am, another question is, this person is from Barcelona, so is it possible to take classes according to CST is what they're asking.
We can try something. We do have online consultations available in Dimensions, and we are offering services for 5 different countries at least as of now. So please connect with our admin desk and they will try and schedule. We need to understand your timing, Indian timing, and then help you out with that. The admin desk can help you on that.
Ma'am, another question is, will the class include speech therapy and occupational therapy both?
Yes, you get to learn and understand how to work on your child's understanding, expressive communication. See, when I talk about expressive communication, it won't be just speech and gestures. It can also be more than that, how to use technology to communicate if there is a need, how to do social interaction, how parents can be involved. It's going to be designed for parents. And when it comes to occupational therapy, more of gross motor, fine motor, activities of daily living will be taught to you how to work on those skills. And talking about sensory processing, you will be taught, that's another thing that a lot of parents have requested for, how to understand sensory needs in our children. So you will be taught sensory processing and how you need to give sensory input or sensory modification of the environment, or provide a direct sensory strategy for your child, how to help that, because that's the key to dealing with meltdowns. That's the key to dealing with problem behaviors. The child is not able to interact and communicate. He gets stressed about it. He feels overwhelmed about it. The child is easily distracted with sensory experiences in the environment. So he's unable to pay attention to what he's doing or what you're saying. So he misses out on what you're speaking to him. So mostly when we see the meltdowns or problem behaviors are often a resultant of sensory needs and inability to communicate and express themselves. So when we deal with the underlying fundamental difficulties that our children are facing, they're able to interact and communicate better.
Ma'am, one of the questions is, homeopathy, medicine and therapy together helps the autistic children. Is it true?
See, I recently was reading this article in the Hindu newspaper. 2 different doctors, both of them are medical doctors who are into modern medicine. One is a person who works with autistic children, and he's more into the neurodevelopmental processing. The other person is to do with the liver, and he's a doctor who deals with all of these differences. And they both don't prescribe alternative medicine like homeopathy or Ayurveda. None of them speak much about homeopathy because they say that there is no adequate research and evidence for homeopathy. The other medical professionals spoke about Ayurveda and how we can consider Ayurveda in interventions, but we need to be careful so that there are no extra toxins that overwhelm the child's liver, which can further lead to other challenges if not monitored. And they also spoke about modern medicines and the side effects. So you have to be very careful what you're choosing and why you're choosing. But what is definitely evidence-based is all the therapies that is offered. Things like water-based interventions, learning swimming, horse riding, all of these improve oxygen supply to the brain. All of these improve the child's attention, focus, sensory regulation, and experiences. And that in turn can directly have a positive impact on the child's communication, child's overall sensory and emotional regulation. These can have a positive impact, which is more research and evidence-based. So if you are taking any kind of medication, it can be Ayurveda, it can be allopathy, it can be modern medicine. I would like for you to take it with a pinch of salt, do more research into it, and be careful what is going internally, like, inside the child, which is also why we have a medical doctor in the team who is a retired professor of pediatrics and who is also the founder of Padma Specialty Care Hospitals, who's also into neurodevelopmental disorders and behavioral pediatrics. So he will be able to walk you through. So in his session, he's going to talk about what is the contribution of a neurologist, psychiatrist, pediatrician, developmental pediatrician. We're going to talk about giving different types of food. Are food allergies for real? Do we need to do a testing? And if yes, then what other considerations we need to have? So these are some of the aspects he's going to address from his side, to give you more information on medicine. And if medication is essential, he probably can also help you understand about stem cell and other things that are upcoming. Okay, yeah, I hope I answered your question, and maybe a question that's there at the back of the mind of other parents as well.
There is another question. Is there no difference at all when they say child is mild autistic and his IQ is around 128 comparatively? Because you mentioned it's not much. Please explain this, as I'm a working mom and struggling with my 4.5-year-old son's behaviors. Also, will he be able to go into inclusive school?
Okay, so I see here that your child's IQ is 128, which is like super, super high. Okay, and sometimes having a high IQ can be a great challenge for the child. His brain might function much faster than you and I, and he probably will have the need to do something or the other all the time to keep himself regulated. And you and I may not be able to match his intellectual needs, right? That also can be a difficulty. And I totally understand when you're saying you're a working mom and you're struggling with your 4.6-year-old son's behaviors. See how you can keep your child engaged most of the time. And sometimes you need a village to do this. You can't do it on your own, which is why there are a lot of clinicians around to help you out. You may have to have someone who will be a caretaker for your child. Maybe your caretakers need to be set across the day, like morning 2 hours, somebody, you have to get part-timers to work with your kid, because one person doing it from morning till evening can be an overstimulation for your child. I hope I have answered your question, and I do understand that the time that we have here is so limited to answer such a deep, intense question like this. But thank you for asking, and I hope I've been able to give you understanding of why you are finding it difficult to understand and help your child, being a working mom yourself, and what you can do, because you cannot manage it yourself. Like I said, you need a village. Not just because your child has got a high IQ, but I believe that holds good for everybody. We all need that. If our kids need extra help, yes, they need extra help.
Ma'am, how do we find out the IQ of a child? I mean, who specifies that?
You have to meet a psychologist with an RCI license who's got their MPhil. So clinical psychologists with an MPhil will do the IQ testing. Even those with a clinical psychology, masters in psychology, can give you an IQ testing. They may not be able to give you a diagnosis, but they can give you the scores and let you know, okay, this falls into high functioning, this falls into low functioning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, another question is, can I know if my kid is autistic? What are the chances for the second kid to be autistic as well?
If you know that your child is autistic, in case if you don't know, you have these checklists out there, MChart. Akshay, can you please type in MChart?
Yeah.
And CARS. These are two screening tools that are freely downloadable for you. You can go through the pointers there. You can mark and you can try and understand the degree, and if there's an autism to be considered or not. That's for you to understand. Now, for you to know if your second child also will be autistic or not, the chances are there is a higher chance of the second child being autistic as well, because it can be a genetic predisposition. It could be the same environmental differences. But I also have seen parents who have the first child is autistic, the second child is not autistic. I've seen many of them like that. In fact, my nephew is autistic, the first one, the second one is non-autistic. So you can never say that. But as per research, the second child has more chances to get an autism diagnosis. Yeah.
Ma'am, there is another one. They say they are from Singapore. So if it is possible for them to complete the practical course any other way.
Yes, if there are any centers in Singapore, please send out the details of those centers. We can collaborate with the centers. We can share with them what we are doing, and we can request them to give you observation, working with the kids there in Singapore. We have 2 of our children from Singapore. So please let us know how we can work this for you. But we need some inputs from you. What are the centers near you? We also can collaborate with the centers that our children are attending there, and we can work it out.
Ma'am, another question is, what is inclusive education for autistic children?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. This is really, really very close to my heart, because we keep saying inclusion, but many a times what I see happening in schools is the autistic child has to understand neurotypical communication with very less effort from their neurotypical peers. Now, I don't blame the children for that, because they are children themselves, but I blame our system for that. Just because a child has an autism diagnosis, he has to make all the modification. He has to say all the apology. He has to always be at the receiving end, which is what I've seen in a lot of schools. But the fact of the matter is, even the child who is neurotypical, who doesn't have a diagnosis of autism, needs to understand that an autistic child will understand the world around them differently. And they may have certain distractions. They may have certain barriers in terms of expressing themselves. They may have barriers in making friends. And that doesn't mean that our kids don't want friends or don't want to make friends. They just don't know how to do it in a way that is expected from the world around them. So when we say inclusive education, it's about how a child with a diagnosis of autism goes into a mainstream school and he finds his place there and he figures out how to fit in and settle in. That's inclusion. But what I believe true inclusion should be is a lot of accommodations where these barriers are removed, where mainstream children, their helpers, their teachers, their librarians, their extracurricular PE teachers, everybody in the school, right from the security guard at the gate to the management, is sensitized, and they're taught what autism is, and they're taught how to interact with autistic children, and they are taught how to teach other children to interact with our children. That is true inclusion. So inclusion is how an autistic child is included into a certain setting without any barriers, without any differences, and not seen lesser in any which way. That is inclusion. All right, I think it's almost 8. Is there any other question, Akshaya? 1 or 2 questions?
Yes, ma'am, there are actually 2 more questions. So one is from one of the parents who is attending a Dimension. So they say, my son, 4 years old, who is attending therapy sessions in Dimensions, had speech delay. Now he is improving in speech, joining words, observes everyone, tries to involve in our conversation. Should I still take speech therapy or OT alone is sufficient, is what they ask.
Okay, this is an important question as well, because many times what I see parents do is when the child starts coming out with a couple of words or they start framing sentences, they stop therapy abruptly. But I will encourage you to do a re-evaluation and find out the scoring. I mean, when you started therapy, how it was. I'm sure there would have been a gap. Have we bridged in the gap? Then we'll find out what is the functional communication level. Okay, at the time of joining, if your child had 1 year gap between their functioning skills and their actual biological age, we want to now measure if that gap is, minimized or if it is sealed, and give you strategies what you can do at home to continue building on their language skills. And we will do more of review sessions, maybe once a month or so, depending on the re-evaluation that we are going to do. So we can guide you on that. Please put a note to Hamsa when you come tomorrow or whenever you're coming, or call her, talk to her, or connect with Akshaya. Akshaya is around, connect with her, and we will give you more clarity on that. And this is also applicable to all parents. When children start talking, don't stop speech therapy immediately. Get a re-evaluation done. Find out if your gap is sealed or if it's minimized. We don't have to necessarily work till it is like fully sealed, but even if it is minimized, there are marginal differences. We can give you a home plan that you can carry over at home, and we can have review sessions once a month, once in 2 months, once in 3 months, and eventually completely discharge from the sessions. So in that way, the transition is very safe for the child. All right. One last question, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So some of them are asking if you know of any best inclusive schools in Chennai and Bangalore.
In Chennai, as of now, I don't have an idea about, but in Bangalore, you can, if it's preschools, Dimensions is going to collaborate with the Little Red Hen in Kotanur, and we're going to have one of our clinicians deputed in the school to bring in inclusion to the fullest that we can bring. And it is not easy to do complete inclusion, but we have decided that we will start working on it, and we are already collaborating with the school. If the child is older, you can check with Bangalore International School. They do fantastic work with inclusion. Like I said, inclusion is hard. It's not easy because it has a lot of stakeholders into it. But these two schools are in this part of the city towards Hennur Cross. And other schools, I'm yet to understand how they do inclusion. I also saw one of our kids attending Narayana Techno School, 2 kids attending Narayana Techno School. They had given beautiful inclusion for those 2 children. Their grades are different. Like the kid who's supposed to be in 9th grade, he's now in 6th grade, but he's at par with his classmate. He's able to pass all his subjects. He has differences in clarity. He probably might seem too friendly, but people can understand him. I also saw that he's made friends with the guards there and the teachers there. I don't know personally how it is, but 2 of our kids have benefited from Narayana Techno School. One is the Kamanahalli branch and the other one is the Kasturi Nagar branch. So you can have a look. This is like from my personal experience I'm sharing. There could be other schools that I'm not aware of. So keep yourself open. And Stonehill, we have kids coming from Stonehill International School, and we see fantastic inclusion there as well. All right, I think we are coming to a close, and I think if you have further questions, you can probably write to one of us and we will get back to you. Akshaya, can you please put in the chat courses.dimensionstherapy.org
Yes.
email ID so they can write to us? I think there's one more question. Somebody has mentioned that the child is 3 years and is he ready for school? Now, school readiness is a process. The child should be able to interact one-on-one comfortably, in the sense with one-on-one therapy sessions. He should be able to sit, attend to a task. He must feel regulated throughout the session. Once he's able to regulate throughout an individual session, do a diet, like where there are 2 kids, do a diet, and the child feels regulated throughout. Then go to 3 to 4 kids in a group and see if the child feels regulated throughout that group session. If they're able to have this kind of a regulation, then they will feel safe in a school environment and they will feel regulated in the school as well. But if the child is having difficulty in regulating himself or herself in the one-on-one session or in a diet or in a small group, then going to a bigger group can be a challenge. So please look into that. Thank you for joining in. Akshay, can you please also send the email ID, the course's email ID, course coordinator email ID? In case of parents have questions, we can send that. We have the recording. We will see how we can send the recording to you all. It's for internal circulation only. You can have a look at it if you missed the first part or the last part of it. Thank you so much for joining in. It was indeed a pleasure for me to be able to share with you about Autism Deep Dive, why we're doing the course, what are some of the things you can learn from the certificate course, how you can implement strategies at home. And we are also open to giving more inputs, just not what we have in the curriculum. We want to keep it flexible. We want to add more information. If you have more concerns, more expectations for you to learn, we are open to that. It's going to be flexible, and we're also going to have one-on-one 1-hour mentoring program for parents who are going to complete the course, and practicals, which is optional. If you'd like to continue working with children, which I would encourage all of you to do, because each of you is a parent yourself, and you know how critical it is to help kids, and you know where you can bridge this gap, and you know how you can contribute. So I encourage you to take the practicals, be a person who can contribute into the lives of other children and other parents. Thank you for joining once again. Have a great evening. I'll see you soon. Bye.